in Arkansas, the Arkansas state legislature recently passed legislation through their state house and Senate that made it so that it would deny critical medical care to transgender youth, to transgender minors. So things like hormones and I forget what the other it also included like a ban on gender affirming surgery, and there was one other thing that was included in as well. I apologize for not having that off the top of my head. Anywho, the Arkansas governor, who is a Republican governor, stepped in and vetoed that bill after it passed through the legislature. The governor recently came out and vetoed it, and he gave this press conference on it. And I thought that what he had to say was actually really solid. It was a principled stance for a Republican to take on an issue like this. And so I think that it deserves some credit, credit where credit is due. You don't see this every day. You don't see the conservatives and right wingers always having consistent principled stances on things like, big government and things of that nature. So let's take a look, listen to what he had to say in his press conference, and then we will come back and discuss. All right.
I have signed the veto of House Bill 1570 today. I have notified the sponsors as well as the leadership in the House and Senate as well. But I wanted today to explain a little bit of the reasoning. If House Bill 1570 becomes law, then we are creating new standards of legislative interference with physicians and parents as they deal with some of the most complex and sensitive matters involving young people. It is undisputed that the population of minors who struggle with gender incongruity or gender dysphoria is an extreme minority. But while they are a minority, they deserve the guiding hand of their parents and of the healthcare professionals that their family has chosen. House Bill 1570 would put the state as the definitive oracle of medical care, overriding parents, patients, and healthcare experts. While in some instances the state must act to protect life, the state should not presume to jump into the middle of every medical, human, and ethical issue. This would be and is a vast government overreach. House Bill 1570 is opposed by the leading Arkansas medical associations, and the concern expressed is that denying best medical care to transgender youth can lead to significant harm to the young person, from suicidal tendencies and social isolation to increased drug use. In Arkansas, gender reassignment surgery is not performed on anyone under age 18. If House Bill 1570 simply prohibited gender reassignment surgeries, then I would sign the bill. But the bill is overbroad, extreme, and does not grandfather those young people who are currently under hormone treatment. In other words, the young people who are currently under a doctor's care will be without treatment when this law goes into effect. That means they will be looking to the black market or go out of state if they can afford it to find the treatment that they want and need. This is not the right path to put them on. Finally, I understand that the General Assembly will likely override this veto. House Bill 1570 had overwhelming support when it passed the first time, and as you know, it takes a simple majority to override the governor's veto in Arkansas. I'm hopeful, though, that my action will cause conservative Republican legislators to think through the issue again and hopefully come up with a more restrained approach that allows a thoughtful study of the science and ethics surrounding the issue before acting. Government under a conservative philosophy should be restrained. This is an example of where restraint is better than overbroad actions that interfere with important relationships in our society.
So I thought that was really, it's commendable, honestly. I mean, this is it's not for the it's not for the same reasons that I would, a leftist or I would defend, the vetoing of this bill. I mean, just on the moral grounds, the actual, I think it was right for him to cite the harm done by enacting bills legislation like this. Is that the science has shown, the science on this is clear, is that this type of interference from the government leads to more harm being done to these people because of they're prevented from getting the gender affirming care that they need, and so it leads to depression and mental health issues, and can often end up at increased drug use, like he said, or suicide is the reality. Transgender youth and even adults face disproportionate levels of suicide rates, so much higher suicide rates. So I thought that this was even though, like you said, in Arkansas, sadly, they can veto the bill with just a simple majority, which I think that's crazy. I mean, I don't see how. I don't know. I won't get into that argument right now, but they can veto the bill with just a simple majority, which they have in Arkansas for the GOP. So they're going to be able to, to override the veto. So they're going to be able to override the veto here, and they likely will. That's unfortunate, and it really sucks, because this is a critical, this is such a monumental. This is the first state to enact this kind of anti-trans legislation. So nowhere else in the country do they have any legislation like this, and it's going to, like he cited here, it's going to, right in the middle of some people already receiving this care, it's going to stop them right in the middle of this. And only the people that can afford to, which is, of course, the wealthier people, are going to be able to get the care that they need by going outside of the state or on the black market, where you then put people in further danger because it's unregulated. It's just a more, you don't know what you're getting yourself into when you can't get, the correct professional care. And of course, on a conservative principle basis, this is big government. They say that they're about small government, in ending government overreach. The government has no real place inside of, in making decisions on individuals, personal bodies and over their bodies and their lives. This is the same thing that they try to do in the right wing. That's so inconsistent with their ideology, with their anti-abortion, ideology, and they try to enforce that through the government, even though they say that the government should be smaller, and that's supposedly a conservative principle, smaller government. The reality is they only want the government to be small in instances where it's helping marginalized people. That's where they want to cut back on government, is anytime it goes to help any marginalized group. That's when they want to cut it back, or poor people, or anything, or anyone, as long as it's it's part of their sort of. And I like that he cited the fact that it's a culture war kind of issue. This is where they focus people's attention onto these cultural issues and make people think that, somehow trans, youth are somehow the danger and the ones harming you somehow. So you need to go and do everything you can to attack these people instead of the actual folks that are creating all the problems in our society right now. And it damn sure ain't trans folks. So what are your thoughts, Kwame? Any thoughts on this?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but while he was talking, I was sitting there thinking in my head, like, damn, that man's spitting. Like, I was like, I got confused for a second there. I didn't know where I was. But no, like, it's consistent. It's actually being consistent to your morale and your ideology here. Typically, usually they'll have those inconsistencies, but like, even like you said, even if it was for not exactly the same reasons, like him sticking to like his morals and whatever way he got there, he had the right take. And, we don't ever accuse us of not being fair representing all different takes. Last time we linked up a couple videos ago, we were talking about Amin Bundy when he came out and had the right take. So, when we see it, if you don't see us praising conservatives, libertarians, different type of people, it's because they haven't earned it. And when they do, just like this, we're going to stand up and be like, yeah, this is right. Do this more often. And we'll praise you more.
Yeah,
It's
carrots
really
and
that
sticks.
simple.
Yeah, carrots and sticks. It's like
Mhm.
sometimes you gotta, they do something good, they get the carrot. They do something
Yep.
bad, they get the stick.
Yep.
And we gotta acknowledge, even if it's not somebody on our team.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear, the Republican governor of Arkansas came out and puts his neck, sticks his neck on the line here to veto this bill. So, Sedalia, what's up, Sedalia? Sedalia says, absolutely 100. Denying care for many providers would be a massive moral and ethical dilemma. It could place some individuals at risk of losing their license to practice. That's another wild aspect of this. The what it does to the healthcare providers as well. And Sedalia goes on to say it also exacerbates the present risk factors facing the demographic. You're cutting off all routes to accessing the ability to have any positive health outcomes. Yep, absolutely. X says kudos to that governor. See, like, absolutely, we credit where credit is due. X goes on to say, refreshing to hear someone talk who's not full of shit for once. Yeah, like this was a really, this was and I like that we can give credit. We're not sitting here with this tribalism of like, it's the Republican Party, so everything they do is bad, everything that Democrats does is good. No, you got to have a nuanced take on this and be able to call out, whatever party it happens to be, whatever team they happen to be playing for, and give credit where credit is due, and when it's deserved. So, and I do think that he was sincere in this moment, and it was deserved here. It's not just some sort of like political ploy of his or anything like that. This stands to have he doesn't really gain politically from this, sadly. It should, but in Arkansas, it just isn't it isn't as popular a political position. And so it doesn't help him to politically to do this. It's really just him having sticking to his principles. So Sedalia says, I don't understand the need to micromanage every element of trans lives. What's next? Telling us how to wipe our ass? Exactly. Like, this is, it's just such overreach, and the need to, like, and this is where and when they talk about big government versus small government for the right wing, it's so inconsistent, because you want small government every time we talk about Social Security, any kind of any federal jobs guarantee, the government coming and implementing a minimum wage. That's all government overreach to the right wing. Anytime that it helps, working class or poor people, it's always government overreach. But then in the case of like we said earlier, a case of abortion, case of birth control for women and people with vaginas, case of this type of healthcare for trans youth. Like, this is where why is it all of a sudden now they want the government to come and step in micromanage, like you said, Sedalia, to micromanage, to get into these personal matters that and this is also the party that says they're all about family values, the Republican family values. Well, leave it to the family then, right? Leave it to the family, leave it, to the institution of the family to decide together to do what they need to do to get, the care that they need, and leave the government out of it. They have no business there. What kind of bureaucracy are we creating just in order to have this authoritarian control over these people's lives? Just stay the fuck out of their business. Like, what is it? Who is it? It's not hurting you. It's not harming you in any way. Like, this doesn't, and this is like the libertarian perspective of like, there's no aggression principle here from a libertarian perspective, because they have this whole anti-aggression principle is like one of the fundamental principles, and there's no aggression happening when when a trans person is getting the healthcare they need. It doesn't affect you in any way. Just mind your fucking business, and then you don't have to worry about it. And then you don't even have to think about it if it's not affecting you directly. If you're not concerned about transitioning, then just stay the fuck out of their business too. Like, I hate you see the same thing with people that are like this fight against gay folks, or it's been the same fight. It's like, just mind your fucking business. Like, if you don't want to see if you don't want somebody to be, if you don't want to date someone of the same sex, good for you. That's your decision to make. Why the fuck do you feel like you have the right to tell somebody else what they can do in that regard? Like, this is not us trying to protect society in any way. It's just us trying to control other people's lives, and it's definite government overreach. So glad that he vetoed it. sad that it's likely the veto is likely to be overridden and the law is likely to be enacted, making Arkansas the first state to have this kind of anti-trans legislation on the books. And I will hope that it can be repealed in some way, but we'll have to see, because other places have done like Utah recently had like a ban on porn too. I was going to cover that story and then just never got around to it. And Utah banned porn, and that was another example of like the right wing like overreaching into people's personal lives, and they banned porn on cell phones. And after Utah banned, no, it was actually in 2016 when Utah made porn a public health crisis. So in 2016, Utah became the first state to make porn a public health crisis, to declare it a public health crisis. And then multiple states followed after that. Like 10 states followed after that and did the same thing and declared porn as a public health crisis. This is hilarious when you look at the actual real public health crisis that we're facing right now and the absurdity of that. But just know that when legislation like this passes in one place, it isn't beyond the pale to think that it will have, ripple effects in other states. So really worried about that. That's a big concern. And it just shouldn't exist anywhere. We got to do everything we can to get this law repealed, because this is going to harm people. Like, let's be real. People will be harmed by this legislation. This is going to hurt people. It's going to hurt trans people. And we can't accept that. We can't allow that to happen. So got to speak out against it, got to draw attention to it. Kudos to the governor, but absolute shame on the state legislature. And if and when they override this veto, we'll be back talking about it and doing everything we can to try to fight to have that repealed. So Sedalia says denying access to care has no logical benefit to the world. Even in comparing costs, we are a very small percentage of the world, and even to the extent of gender affirming care, we all don't access. Yes, and exactly, not every trans person accesses that, and like Sedalia was saying, the argument about like, and it's terrible that we even have to try to make this argument. I hate when we have to try to make the economic argument for these things that should just be moral. Of course, most of us we've made that moral conclusion already, but really the even on the economic toll of it, they're not acknowledging the fact that, okay, for all of the costs that might be associated with people getting the care for the gender affirming healthcare, there are all kinds of costs of, when those people end up in the healthcare system, because of, drug addiction, self-harm, or the cost of, one, you can't even talk about, how do you put a cost on a human life? Tell me what the value of a human life is. But you're talking about people, being put at risk of higher risk of suicide at that point. So you're talking about people losing their lives. What's the cost to, the family, the community, of a human life, and all the costs associated with burying a person and a funeral and all those services. So there's costs associated with denying these people the care that they need, and they don't acknowledge that. So economically, even though it's a small amount of folks, I would make the argument that even it's not even like it's the argument has to be it's not going to cost that much. It honestly probably costs more, and especially if you value human life, it definitely costs more when we block people from accessing that care. So I think it even goes even worse than that. But great point. I totally agree.